identify what was working and try and multiply that rather than go, okay, growth is the goal, let's grow.
Yeah.
I think if growth is the goal, it's going to be diluted. Whatever you're doing is going to feel diluted. So that's definitely what we do. Just focus on a concentrated area where we would just grow the brand and business from there and build something that's just super, super strong. Got strong people involved, the content's strong, and that'll, in turn, those two things will build a strong brand.
One thing that you think that helps a business or a brand stay top of mind?
Engaging content. You're competing for engagement. It needs to cut through. It needs to be fun and exciting, and people are just scroll. Why are they going to stop? I think that, yeah, huge part.
We're in the attention economy right now, and 100%. I think content is the only thing that is grabbing people's attention.
If I could go back again, I would...
Josh, welcome to Top of Mind. Now, there is no denying that I am a huge fan of the REVL brand. I currently train there. I've trained at a couple of your different locations, and I'm really excited today to pick your brain around how you've built the business, how you've used marketing and social media and your personal brand to leverage that business into kind of what it is today. So thank you so much for joining me.
No, thanks for having me.
I'm going to get straight into it. We've seen kind of the fitness fads rise and fall. You know, there's, group training, there's, the F45s that have, risen and then slowly started to decline. The fitness industry is such a tricky one to navigate, let alone succeed in. So how do you feel, or what do you feel has been that kind of secret ingredient when it comes to building a successful gym franchise like REVL?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a very good question. I think, companies like F45 did a fantastic thing for the industry. They really paved the way and exposed, a large portion of people to group training. Fantastic for us. I think we always knew, myself and my business partner, Ben, we always knew the style of training that worked with our own clients. So both of us have a personal training background, and essentially he owned a number of franchises, F45 and KX. They didn't align with his interests. I was a personal trainer, and I was looking to open a business. There was no kind of franchise model that aligned with what I wanted to do or the way I wanted to train my clients. So there was really this gap in the market, I guess, for the style of training that we were currently doing. So it's kind of, it's group strength and conditioning training. It's, the principles behind our programs have been around for a very, very long time. Periodized strength training has been around for years and years and years. So we weren't reinventing the wheel. We were simply taking what we knew worked and packaging it up in a group model so that we could build communities centered around progression, essentially getting people like yourself and other clients who might not actually be overly interested in performance per se initially. They might not be interested in coming in and testing a 1 rep max deadlift. They might just want to sweat with their friends and lift some weights. But all of a sudden we've got these communities that, 3-6 months in, we've got clients who are chasing 1 rep max PRs and that sort of stuff. So for us, I think the training modality was definitely one part of it. We knew it worked. We knew more people needed to be exposed to that style of training because there were so many fads out in the market that kind of promised all these things. And then the other part of it was, well, how do we create lasting communities? Like, how do we bring people together? Because connection's such a strong part of fitness. So that's something we really want to do.
And so I suppose you touched on it just before around where you started and as you started REVL. Now, you started not really, in the health space and the fitness space, but not really as a coach, or you eventually went into being a PT, but you kind of started in that kind of content creation space. Take us through the start of that and how that kind of evolved into where you are now with REVL.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was doing a fair bit of traveling at that stage. So, I bought a camera Well, I actually bought a camera for my wife, my now wife.
Shout out to Holly.
Shout out to Holly. Thank you for putting up with me. So I actually bought a camera for her, and she never really used it.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, I'll use it.
Yeah.
So we did a whole bunch of traveling, and I just got into the habit of, bringing the camera, taking photos, and then I kind of tried to dabble with video, etc. So then when we came back from a big trip around Canada, I jumped back into running my PT business and thought, well, hey, why don't I create content for my PT business? No one else is doing it. I'm working in a commercial gym, fitness first. People aren't carrying around cameras. It's not really the done thing. Even have your phone out filming you is kind of like, it was only just started taking off. So I kind of saw this opportunity to build my PT business inside Fitness First and kind of advertise, I guess, externally instead of just waiting for new clients to come through the door.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. How can I shoot some of my own content, and then how can I teach myself to potentially run ads and try and attract new clients?
If you love this episode, help us to grow and reach more people by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a review.
So that kind of opened up a whole world to me when I started going down, the social media path and content and marketing and all that sort of stuff. And that's where I bought a marketing course online and started teaching myself, how to run ads and how to, map out your grid and make things look pretty and all that sort of stuff. It was simple things like learning the basics of photography, the rule of thirds and that sort of stuff, which for me, I just had a camera and I was just snapping away. So it was just kind of teaching myself those basics. And I guess I put one layer on top of the other. And then I kind of branched out on the side of running my PT business and I guess running the marketing and advertising for that business. I started shooting some content for local cafes and just free of charge. I just wanted experience. I just wanted these guys to use my content so that I could build my personal brand on the side of what I was doing inside the gym space.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a question that we get all the time in the business is, should I build my personal brand first and then launch my business off the back of that? Because that's very much driven by generating trust, generating an authentic profile, and then launching something that's, able to be sold or, grown off the back of that. Or do you launch a business, scale it, and then in turn grow your personal brand at the same time? And I think far too often I'm seeing that people have started their personal brands first and then been able to kind of piggyback off the back of that. Was that the case for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the opportunities that kind of proceeded from me kind of dabbling into shooting some coffee style content or whatever, I guess opened up opportunities for me to be in the position I'm in today. I think at that point in time, I didn't really think about it too much. And I think that's quite an important part of whatever kind of direction you're taking is it should be quite authentic and it should be quite a natural progression. I think, if you try to, necessarily scale a business as your first thing, then, you really need to be sure as to why you're doing that. And it needs to be authentic. If you're going down the route of building your personal brand, again, it needs to have that why kind of behind it. For me, I kind of just thought that if I could build my personal brand, I could still do my PT stuff here. That was kind of running business as usual. I knew it kind of had its, I guess, a bit of a glass ceiling inside the commercial gym space, but I knew if I kind of built this personal brand that I could potentially reach out to some other gym providers, in the boutique fitness space, which is the direction I wanted to head in, and potentially land a job in that space that wasn't 100% training. I knew I didn't want to coach clients for the rest of my life. I enjoyed interacting with clients, but I knew I wanted to kind of shift a little bit and start to kind of build a life that would support myself and my wife. And that was, that kind of spanned beyond just trading, 1 hour of my time for $100. So I think that's kind of the direction I took. And I guess in building my personal brand, I did get off the first job I got offered was actually a a studio manager and social media manager role, like a hybrid role.
Yeah.
And that was purely based off that business looking at my Instagram, seeing that I knew how to take photos and edit content and that sort of stuff. And that kind of landed me that role in the new brand, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it kind of comes back to that old saying that I feel like I've grown up with post-uni, which is like, be doing the job that you want to be doing before you get hired to do it. And I think it's an older mentality where, you know, if you want a promotion, you should be, you know, aspiring to do that job well before you get that promotion, or prove that you can do that job before you get that promotion or that job. And I think that kind of talks directly to that point around the fact that you were already creating content before you then landed a full-time role, essentially creating content. Absolutely.
And don't expect to get paid for it either. You know, like, I don't know. I don't know if it was my grandma or my parents, or I remember someone saying to me that you just need to push your energy in the right direction, and you can make anything happen. And I think for me, that's kind of stuck with me over the years, and I've kind of never been too worried about where I would land. I tried a whole bunch of things when I was growing up and kind of landed in fitness, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I like this. But I'm a big believer in pushing energy in the right direction, and you can make things happen. You can open up opportunities for yourself. But I think it's super important. Like, you know, you're never too good to learn. You know, you're never too big for any kind of role or any task or anything like that. I'm a big believer in that. So I was never out there kind of, you know, shooting content and wanting to get paid straight away, or sending invoices with 7-day payment terms like that. It's just not the way I operate. Yeah. You know, I'd rather be, you know, in the red, invoices late 30 days, but delivered good quality work. Yeah. Ahead of everything else. So I think
and you've got a strong relationship, right? Like, I
exactly
think
right.
It's treating people like people and human beings first and foremost. So take me back to when you started REVL. Was it always the end goal to have as many gyms and locations as you do now?
Do you know what? I was speaking to my business partner about this the other day. I think the goalposts have shifted a few times. Okay. I think when we first started, we were super naive in where we could take the brand. And I think our initial goal was 50 sites. We wanted 50 sites. That was it. That was like North Star. We're going to be fucking millionaires. Like, you know, we're going to be killing it. You know, and then as we got into it, we're like, we're going to need more than 50. Yeah. We're going to need a lot more than 50. So then it was like, all right, we're going to need like 150 to 200, you know, across the globe. I think as opportunities started opening up in Singapore and Dubai, and you know, we're fielding inquiries from the UK, from Ireland, from the US, you know, Korea, like random. They're coming from everywhere, which was really cool to see. It was cool that we could start capturing attention across the globe, you know, from Australia, from a business that we started, you know, in lockdown from our living room. So the goalposts have shifted over time. I think we've almost come full circle, and we're kind of back at, okay, maybe we do only want, you know, about 60 studios across Australia. You know, that is enough. And I think that's quite a sensible approach for where the market's at right now. You know, it's very saturated market. There's a lot of options out there for people, especially in the franchise space. So you've got to be a little bit careful and consider, I guess, where the market's at and where the consumer's at as well. It's always changing.
Absolutely. So then when you started REVL, and you talk about, you know, the landscape changing all the time, you know, we see fads come and go all the time. When you started REVL, how did you make sure that the brand that you were creating, or that you wanted to create, was going to last longer than a couple of years?
Yeah, well, I think we were always very authentic with what we were putting out into the market. I think the amount of advice we got over the years to commercialize the program, to make it super simple so absolutely anyone can walk in and do it. And that's like the terminology, the way it's written, displayed, coached. You know, we run 2 programs either side of the room instead of just one. You know, there are complexities to it. And then I think the other thing was that, you know, people were telling us to add color to the brand. you know, and they were probably the two biggest things: commercialize your product and add color to your brand, and you'll sell to mass market, and away you go. And I think we had the opportunity to do that. It just didn't align with us. It's just not what we're after. I think, you know, I got out of the commercial gym space and moved into the boutique space for a reason, and I wanted to keep it that way. And I think any kind of brand I'm involved with, or you know, consult with or whatever, I'm a huge advocate for just following the path that you originally, you know, went down. You know, stay authentic. I think it's the best thing you can do.
Absolutely. Now, I'm really curious because I don't think I've ever asked this question. Where did the name REVL come from?
That is a good question.
Or is it just...
So when we first started...
I feel like this is going to be a great story.
Yeah, well, when we first started, you know, it was essentially, you know, I met my business partner in another business where I got offered the role as social media manager and whatnot. But that business fell over, went into administration, etc. Ben and I knew, my business partner Ben and I knew that there was a space in the market for a brand, a boutique brand that wasn't commercialized like the others, and a product that was fairly similar to the one we were operating under this other brand, but it needed some tweaks and changes. You know, like men and women don't need to train on opposite sides of the room. It's 2020. I think we can all come together. You know, like there were a lot of things that needed to change, both from a branding and from a product standpoint. And one of our other founding partners at the time had some branding done. So he had a graphic designer in Melbourne who had this branding done, and we were like, okay, this all kind of aligns. We're all kind of bringing something to the table here. Let's piece it together and let's go. I think REVL really resonated with us. I guess the actual term to, you know, the noun to revel in something, or is that a verb? I don't know. Let's not get into it.
I could
but
ask
but to revel in something means to take great pleasure and pride, or to be loud and obnoxious.
Yeah.
And I think at that time in the market, we were loud and obnoxious. You know, we were quite disruptive with the content we were putting out, the program we were bringing to market, and the communities inside our first 4 gyms. They were super, super strong. The coaches all had big profiles. Like it was this really strong brand that kind of entered the scene, and any kind of fitness competition that we're involved in, it was like our studios were, you know, up there in the top 5 or whatever. So we were making quite a lot of noise in the market at that point. So it all kind of fell into place, you know, and here we are.
I love that. And so when you started, you obviously each brought something to the table. Did you have like a marketing plan? Like obviously you hadn't gone any formal education around marketing or anything like that, or building a brand other than your own. You've done your online marketing course. You've dabbled in social media and photography and content creation. Where did you start when it comes to marketing something like that to an audience that are used to seeing gyms all the time in their face?
Yeah, I think we didn't know what we were doing. We had absolutely no idea.
I feel like most people don't.
No, we had absolutely no idea.
Anyone that says that they do are lying.
Oh, like marketing plan? What's a marketing plan? You know? Yeah, I think at the time, you know, without getting too deep, like I had a bad skiing accident in 2020, like right about when we kicked REVL off, just before. And so I was having some pretty serious mental health issues over the next kind of 9 months while I was recovering from that head injury. So to be completely honest, like I was building this brand and I was just in a rabbit hole. Like I was just in this place of, it was like fight or flight, you know, just piecing stuff together and kind of shooting content. You know, I could hardly have conversations with people, but I was out there just shooting content and editing and just like pushing what I wanted to see in the brand. And And I think that worked for a period of time. You know, I think it created a really strong brand to start off with. But then I think as the business developed, we brought on more studios. We were dealing with, more clients or more diverse, a more diverse range of clients outside of our original 4 studios. We started to really need to consider, okay, who is our target market? You know, we probably asked ourselves that, 12 months after we started the business.
Yeah.
Who is our target market?
Yeah,
who are we trying to attract here? And then I think, like every business does, over the next few years, in July this year, we'll be 4 years old. And we've gone through these phases, these ebbs and flows of like having an identity crisis. Who's our target client? Like, how do we attract them? Are we for everyone? Are we not for everyone? And I think every business kind of goes through that, at some stage. But I think what we knew was that we were fantastic at bringing people together. And that was a combination of our training style and just the type of people that were coming into our studio. Yeah. We knew that we were attracting peak performers, whether that's performance in the gym, whether it's performance in their career, whether it's performance being able to, run around with their kids, whatever it is. But we knew we attracted people that wanted more out of life and people that were ambitious. We're kind of never just happy settling for, today's good enough. So I think we just chased that type of client and we still chase that type of client. We still get a diverse range, but, for the most part, they're the kind of members, coaches, studio owners, and staff we have inside the business today.
Yeah, and I mean, I see it in the gym all the time. You've got such a broad spectrum of people there, but they all have something in common, and it's almost like that one thing in common that they do have is like that time at the gym in the morning or in the afternoon is their time to kind of, focus, get their shit together for the rest of the day or to end their day and then get on with what they need to do there and then. You mentioned before around having coaches that had big profiles. Is that one of the kind of tactics that you use when you launch the business to help get the word out there about REVL?
I think it was definitely a consideration for sure. And that was probably, 3.5, 4 years ago, that was when fitness influencers were kind of still really, really relevant. Yeah. Not saying they're not relevant now. They've definitely got their place. But I think people... normal people like my wife who might be working in fashion, they would potentially back then they were following some fitness influencers. I don't think that's necessarily the case now. I think it's all a lot more lifestyle-y and fitness is just one part or fashion's one part, whatever it is. So it was definitely a consideration. We were quite lucky that those guys were already engaged with the brand and with some of the people involved. So those guys definitely helped us back in the day, and they're all still in the industry and they've kind of moved on to different things, which is the natural kind of progression. But it's nice to have some of the OG team still involved, 4 years later.
Yeah, I love that. Now, to get a little bit more kind of tactical, you said you had no marketing plan, which I feel like most businesses, when they start, they're like, we just need to get it out there, right? But what did you guys do when you started to get the word out there? Like, was there a specific... I don't want to say strategy because a lot of the time it's not planned, but was there specific channels or avenues that worked better for you guys when you launched?
Yeah, I think we've pretty much built the whole brand off Instagram. And that's at the start it was, okay, we've got 4 gyms. I was shooting the content, editing the content, posting the content, sharing the content with all the studios, etc. Right. And that was my plan. That was the plan at the start. Yeah. It was like, let's produce bulk content that stands out from the rest and share it with everyone so that they can post it, we can post it. And it was just this ecosystem of like, we would post something on the HQ page, REVL.training, and then all the coaches would share it. And then, other people and it just created this like wave.
Yeah.
So anytime we launched something like an event, a fundraiser, anything like that, it just went viral in our community. And then that just naturally expands. I think then, once we were kind of a year or two in, I was like, okay, this business needs to stand on its own 2 feet beyond Instagram. We need other mediums. We need to be EDMing clients. We need a LinkedIn probably to say that we're a legitimate business. We need to diversify a little bit, which then we started going down that path. And I think we kind of hit a bit of a saturation point inside the business where we couldn't actually shoot content at, one of our Queensland studios or Singapore or whatever, right? Because we're based in Sydney. So it was a lot harder to get out to our studios to shoot relevant content to post on our own Instagram page. So then it actually became more important for the individual studios' Instagram pages to be strong. So then I think we kind of allocate a lot of resources to building out, whether it's guides or strategy docs or briefs, so that these guys could then go and get their own content shot of their own communities, and essentially replicate what we did at a head office level at a studio level. And I think, that's something we still do to this day. I think if you look at any of our studios' Instagram pages, they're all quite strong and they all align with the business really, really well.
I think that's the one thing that's really stuck out for me. When I first heard about the REVL brand, I was living in the eastern suburbs of Sydney and I heard about the Potts Point one. And at the time I had just heard that the gym that I was training at was being closed, and it was quite a sudden closure. And for me, there was a really natural draw to a page that had such strong content that I was like, these guys know what they're doing. And my brain naturally goes, if they know what they're doing on Instagram, they know what they're doing in real life, which doesn't always translate. But, you look at a restaurant, for example, and it's like if you've got a strong Instagram presence, you go, that place is going to have great food. Doesn't always work, but I do feel like there's that natural correlation with strong content to building the trust that the product or the service or the person is going to actually be as good. How strong is there a focus on content for you guys? And how, as you said before, it's all well and good when you've got 4 studios in Sydney and you're creating content for all of them and you have that control. But as your business begins to scale, what things do you put in place, or do you have, like you said, you have guidelines and things like that, but how easy is it, or how can perhaps other businesses that are scaling look to implement something like you guys and have such consistent content across all of the pages? Because if you look at any REVL now, the content looks very similar. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think that there's probably a few parts to it. I think we really baked in from the start, we baked into our new studios how important content and advertising was. We put in these guys' franchise agreements that they need to spend a minimum of, I think it was $1,000 or $1,500 on advertising a month. And then content was a huge part of that. So at every studio launch, we were essentially making our studios have a content creator there shooting photo, video, etc. And it's something that we kind of just, as I said, we kind of baked it into the culture of the business that everyone had to produce fantastic content. And I think it's interesting that you say, it looked like Potts Point knew what they were doing. I think that's fantastic. That's a combination of the training product. It's not a fad. It's not a gimmick. So it does look like, this is something serious. And B, the quality of the staff, the coaching, and probably the quality of people moving inside the gym because of the style of product. And that's something we wanted to put on show. And I think what we kind of notice in our business, and I think what other people can potentially do in their business, is whatever you do from the top will flow down. So whatever kind of trend we set at a head office level, all our studios are looking to head office for that next trend, that next piece of direction. And it's not a matter of us communicating, hey guys, we're now using a glitch outro, or hey guys, we're now cutting videos like this. It's just a natural progression. We might be working with a new content creator and we're like, yes, that is amazing. A lot of content creators we do work with, we give them a lot of creative freedom because we don't want to just replicate the same content over and over again and become quite stale. So we're quite happy to kind of move around as long as it really aligns with, I guess, our direction, our vision. But essentially the rest of our business looks to that source of truth, I guess, for that next style and that next bit of direction, which I think is super, super important. So you can build out the guides and you can build out, you know, the manuals and things like that. But I definitely think as a brand, you need to be looking forward and need to be setting those trends for the rest of the business.
Yeah.
And then for any new staff or anyone that come through, you know, for any of our new coaches joining the network or studio managers, whatever, you know, we go to the lengths of getting everyone's phones out in the induction, opening up the camera settings and getting them all to set their camera settings. You know, you'll notice a lot of our stuff inside our studio is quite dark. So we set
that contrast down.
Exactly right. So we set the brightness down and we show them how to shoot, you know, where to stand and where to position yourself and that sort of stuff. So it's quite hands-on.
Yeah.
But it's just so crucial because that's, you know, people go to Instagram before they go to Google these days, you know.
100%.
If you want to see if a business is open, you go to Instagram, you don't go to Google.
It's so true. And I think the stat is something like 82% of people trust online search more than anything else. And I think that that's both terrifying for businesses that don't have a strong online presence, but also really exciting for businesses that do prioritize that online content, because it's saying that, you know, if I say to you, you should go to this restaurant, and you go, yeah, cool, let me look at it on Instagram first. It's saying that you trust Instagram over my word of mouth and my like recommendations. So I think that that's an exciting opportunity for brands that are doing it well. Brands that aren't doing it at all or aren't doing it well, it's a bit of a scary space to be in, because there's a huge opportunity that they could build more or grow more or whatever if they just invested in that content and that kind of online presence a little bit more. Now, you spoke about the stuff that worked for you. What didn't work for REVL? Was there anything that you tried and you were like, fuck, we're not doing that again?
Running ads myself. Never do that again.
So the online course didn't work?
Well, it worked for my little PT business,
yes.
but, you know, I didn't need mass clients. You know, I only needed a few. I think, I think what didn't work for us, something that didn't work for us was focusing a lot on our competition at one particular point. It was probably maybe a 6-month window where we felt like we were lost. We were like, who are we? You know, a couple of our pre-sale campaigns had underperformed and we started questioning like our whole existence. We were like, okay, should REVL even be here? You know, Ben and I were like, have we just completely fucked up? Like, have we dug ourselves a hole? And like, what are we going to do? You know, and sleepless night, like, dark place. You know, I think anyone who owns a business will resonate with the fact it's fucking lonely from time to time. You know, like if you've got a partner, that's fantastic. You can pepper them, but even they get sick of you after a while, you know?
Totally. And I think even to that point, you know, I talk about it all the time. Like there's pros and cons to having a business partner as well, right?
For sure.
There's, you know, I don't have a business partner, even though I regularly refer to the business as us. People are like, oh, do you have a co-founder? I'm like, no, it's just us, like me, us, like mentally us. There's like multiple brains in here. But I think there's pros and cons to having a business partner, right? Like the pro is that you have someone to bounce those ideas off. You have someone to kind of ride that tough wave and ride the highs and lows with you. But then the cons are like where you do butt heads or you don't, you know, where you don't see eye to eye or agree on something. You're like, fuck, this would be easier if I was on my own.
Totally.
So continue what you were saying around, you know, ads and, you know, focusing on that too heavily.
Yeah. So I think for us, so we're like, okay, things aren't working. Who are we?
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're focusing on all our competitors and we just kind of lose our way a little bit and we're kind of like, okay, well, maybe the brand, maybe those people were right. Maybe we do need to commercialize the product. Maybe we do need to commercialize the brand somewhat. But there's just this conflict the whole time, right? How we feel and what we potentially think needs to be done. And it just doesn't marry up. And we kind of, there has to be another way. You know, I think we're so, REVL's here today because Ben and I are two of the most stubborn people you'll ever meet. You know, we just don't give up. And we just work and work and work. So we've just found solutions all along the way. So I think what really kind of pulled us out of that that time of comparing ourselves to the rest of the market and kind of thinking we'd lost our way, we'd lost our spark, was finding the right partner to come in and help us troubleshoot some of that stuff. So at that time, we were quite fortunate to partner with a UX team, a UX and design team. And these guys basically came in and did user research, surveyed all our members. They got out to studios, spoke to staff, members, you know, trained inside a lot of our studios, and really just unpacked what was really happening out there, you know, beyond just us sitting in our office behind our computer. And I think that kind of really allowed us to get a lot of insight into who our consumers really were, and what they wanted, and also our direction as a business. You know, it kind of reaffirmed the fact that we're not for everyone, and that's totally cool. You know, you just need to double down on who you are for and deliver more value to that customer. And I think, you know, ever since we did that whole project, it was probably maybe a 4 or 5 month project, maybe longer. And we came out the other side of that just absolutely certain as to who we were. But yeah, comparing yourself to the competition out there can definitely make you lose your way.
Hey guys, if you are listening on Spotify, do not forget to give us a 5-star rating. It will help us to reach more people. Yeah, I think it's something that we talk to our clients about a lot, because far too often, you know, we'll have clients come to us being like, this is what our competitor's doing, like we should do something like that. And, you know, one thing that I say all the time is if you're focusing on the competitor, you're losing sight of the customer. Because if you're focusing on the competitor, they're focusing on the customer. So they're always going to be 2 steps ahead of you. Whereas if you focus on the customer, you're going straight to the source of where their inspiration is coming from, right? And where their kind of data and insight is coming from. So would you say now you look at competitors in the space or keep an eye on them, or you're just very kind of tunnel vision on what you guys are doing and what you deliver?
We definitely keep an eye on them. I think it's important for you to know who they are and what they're doing. But I think it's also important for you to filter that. Yeah, really be able to filter that. I think, you know, we see some of our gyms do it sometimes, where they'll look at a new gym opening down the road and they've got a new offer. Fantastic. But they're kind of stewing over this new offer. It's cheaper than ours and all that sort of stuff. It just comes back to what value are you providing inside the business? Like, why are people going to come to you over them? You know, if you're purely trying to attract a new customer purely based off the offer, and that client might not be the right one. You know, they actually might not be the right customer if they just want to go for something that's cheaper and don't necessarily value what you have inside the business.
100%.
That is okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of just doubling down on the value you have inside the business, and then how can you communicate that to your audience or your customer.
Yeah, it's that age-old conversation where I'm like, people will pay $700 for a Tiffany paperclip because they see value in it.
100%.
And yet some people won't even buy paper clips from Officeworks because they don't need it and there's no value there. So I think you're right, it does come back to that value that you provide. Now, you pride yourself on community, and I think that it's really obvious when you walk into a REVL gym just how important that community element is for you. You know, building a community online and then building a community in real life have two very different approaches and very different kind of aspects or elements of them. How would you say you've built your community online and the differences to building it online and kind of offline in a gym?
Yeah, I think online's a tricky space these days, right? Like you're competing. There's a lot of competition for people's attention. So I think, our strategy moving forward is to ramp up the type of content, the quantity of content we produce. But also, and I think I spoke to you about this, a few weeks ago. It was like sometimes the content that you put the least amount of effort into performs the best.
I didn't even want to talk about it.
So I think our strategy now is like have fun. Our marketing department needs to have fun. You need to enjoy what you're creating, because if you enjoy it, it's going to come out in the content. It's going to come out in the comms, and that's what people want to consume these days. That's what cuts through. So building our presence online, I think we want to put a lot more personality behind it. And I think that's more important more than ever. As opposed to in person, I think with our coaches and our staff coming through our inductions and being around the people who created the brand, etc., it's a lot easier to get that across. And we're quite confident in people, our staff being able to deliver that to the members. But you would know, training inside our studios, it can be easy for then clicks to form inside studios. So you need to work on breaking down those clicks and making sure everyone feels included and that sort of stuff. So there's definitely different mechanics for both. I think online is something we can kind of control a little bit more, and then in person is something you kind of got to keep a close eye on and have your ear to the ground, because business, we might have one of our studios that's might not be underperforming per se, but is just kind of plodding along, and you're kind of thinking, okay, why? It's got good staff inside the studio. It's they're great coaches, they're delivering the product well, etc. But if there's that underlying kind of tone of clickiness, or there might be someone dating the wrong person inside the studio, which happens all the time. You kind of need to navigate that, as well. I think that's just as important.
How do you do that? Because I think that, I think about it from a more corporate space, right? Like, there will be, if you spend time with people all the time, and, the gym, especially the type of people that train at REVL gyms, they're there almost every day. And the program is designed so that you can be there almost every day. And so when you're
make
spending...
us sound like junkies.
I'm obsessed. With that, then, if people are there every day, it's only natural that when you're spending time with a person or people or groups of people in the same space all the time, there are going to be those kind of cliques that generate, and there are going to be those people that, gravitate towards one another. As an HQ or a kind of owner or overseer of all of these spaces, how do you navigate having those conversations or breaking up those cliques, or essentially the smaller communities that develop within the gyms?
Yeah, I think the big thing for us is we always want, our coaching community to be proactive with not allowing those cliques to form. You're right. You're naturally going to have, a group of 6 or 8 or 10. They all kind of train at the same time, etc. But I think, say on our Saturday sessions where they're big team sessions and that sort of stuff, and the coaches are jumping in the sessions, and it's easy for the coaches to kind of gravitate towards those regulars and just go and train with the group of 8 or the group of 6 or whatever. I think they play a key role in our business of making everyone else feel welcome.
Yeah.
The guys that are kind of standing in the corner that come in as a solo, they don't have the group of 6 or 8 to pair with or whatever. They're the ones that the coaches need to go and pair with.
100%.
They're the ones that they need to take under their wing, and that's something, we really try and distill that down into our staffing network, just how important that is, because chances are those guys in the corner they're the ones that are also going to keep coming back to your gym and paying membership fees for 12 months, 2 years, etc., rather than, potentially the younger crowd that might jump from this gym to that gym and then another gym 6 months later. So I think it's more so just having a bit of a mature mindset to the business more broadly. And yeah, you're right. It is hard, for us to keep track of that across 30 sites is super tough. But I think we play quite a key role in I guess, distilling that down into the network through the induction process. Yeah.
I mean, I saw it, right? Like I heard about REVL the first time when I was in the East. Not long after that, I moved to the Northern Beaches, and I knew probably one person in the Northern Beaches. Like all my friends were in the East. I moved because my partner at the time was building a business in the Northern Beaches, and it was easy. And I originally started at a gym that had group classes, but they were very siloed. So the workout itself wasn't tailored towards meeting other people or partnering with other people. It was just like you come in, you do this station, you do that station, and you go, right? And so when I first walked in the doors at REVL Manly, the first thing that happened to me was one of the coaches there, Charlie, walked up to me and he was, we love Charlie. Shout out to Charlie.
Shout out to Charlie.
I walked in, I knew nobody. And whilst I had been training for the best part of like 12, 15 years of my life, I felt so uncomfortable being in a new space because I knew nobody. And I was like, are these people going to be nice? This is the first time I'm going there. He came over to me. He's like, hey, how are you? Super friendly. And I'll never forget it. And he was like, come in. This is what you do. Talk to me through it. And then throughout the workout, and honestly, the time that I was at Manly, he continued to check in with me being like, how are you going with this? How's this? You should fix this with your form. Like, and was just super attentive to not just me, but everybody in that class or that gym at the time. And it just made me feel so welcome. And I think the nature of how you set out your classes, with the community sessions and, the Saturday sessions where you are forced to partner with groups of people that perhaps you've never met before. Whilst I'm super outgoing, I would never kind of force myself into someone's group or whatever, but those kind of Saturday sessions make you partner with people that perhaps you've never met before. And some of my closest friends now are the people that I've met in that gym, which I think is just such an important kind of thing to note when it comes to building that community that you've built, is that, some of my closest friends now are the people that I've met in the gym, and I only met them 2 years ago. And I think, you all have this one thing in common. So with that and building that community, how are you now kind of harnessing the relationship and communities that people have built in that gym to kind of build on that sense of community?
Yeah. I think for us, we've shifted strategy as a business. As I mentioned earlier, we're no longer, heading for 150, 200 sites around the world. We want a smaller, closer knit type community. And I think that's partly due to, as we scaled the business, Ben and I felt we actually didn't belong anywhere. We might train at, I might train at REVL Brookvale, a fair bit. He might train at the Unley Studio in Adelaide. It's close to home and whatnot. But we're not part of any community. So we've got these 30 gyms that we're not actually part of, because we are always focusing on where's the next site, where are we opening next, there's commercial things we're dealing with, etc. So we weren't as ingrained in the network as we would like to be. So when it comes to things like Christmas parties, it's like, well, should we go? I don't really know too many people.
Yeah.
Like we have the same feeling inside our own business, right? So I think for us moving forward, it's about nurturing those relationships that have formed inside our gyms. And I think community, culture, and connection are our kind of 3 C's that we're focusing on, from this year moving forward. And any kind of decision we're making inside the business is kind of governed by those 3 C's. And just making sure that those decisions we are making, just align with our vision and our mission and all that sort of stuff, is super, super important. And I think, back to your point about, coming into the studio as a single, I think, 80% of the members that would walk into or the trials that would walk into our studios come in there alone. You know, they're not coming in with a partner or a friend or anything like that. So I think for us, we need to acknowledge the fact that people are building these genuine connections inside our studios, and how do we kind of create, how do we push that engagement a little bit further? How do we create events or initiatives inside the studio that A, support the members, and B, just bring that community together more regularly. And that might be, you might have a group of 3 other guys and girls that you train with, and you might want to go compete in an event. Well, how does REVL support that and facilitate that journey, albeit outside of a REVL studio? And I think that's super important. REVL really builds the foundation for people to go and do more, you know, and I think if we don't facilitate that, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So for us this year and moving forward, it's just about nurturing that community. How can we give back to the guys who have essentially got REVL to the position, into the position it is today?
Yeah, I love that. One thing that I think really stands out for me with REVL is, you know, if you look at any other gym franchise and commercial gyms even for that matter, they're very like, oh, you train at that location, well, I train here, and there's no crossover, right? So it's like if you're a member of a Pilates studio in one location, there's no ability for me to then go to Melbourne and train at the same studio but just a different location. And I think one thing that I saw recently was like, or seeing more of, is like, you know, there's people from Neutral Bay that come down to Brookvale, which is where I'm training at. And then when I went to Melbourne last week, I was able to go and do a session there. And there's no kind of, as you said, clickiness in terms of like, oh no, you'll have to pay for an individual session here and then you can't transfer your membership. There's none of that. And it's interesting because I spoke to Amy Castano from Acero, and they've kind of done something similar with their PTs, where their PTs are paid to service the clients, but they're not clicky. So if a client wants to do weights with one person and goes to do boxing with another person, that's encouraged within their space. Was that something that you guys consciously did in terms of that kind of inter-studio connection, or is it just kind of something that's evolved over time?
Yeah, I think it's just something that's evolved over time. You know, I think it's, you know, you mentioned before that, you know, there's some people that train inside our studio 6-7 days a week, you know, and I think, you know, we get people who want to be around the business. They want to be around the brand. They want to be around the coaches, the other members, etc. And I think that's quite healthy. I think we're bringing to market a product that is a long-term training solution. And I think with that, we need to make sure we deliver a long-term solution for our members. And, you know, training inside the one studio for the next 3 to 4 years and not being able to do anything else, I think is ludicrous, you know. So, you know, the ability, say for yourself, to travel between studios, fantastic. I think, you know, now in the year of the run, you know, we're seeing a lot of members, you know, go and join neighbouring studios, run clubs and things like that, which is, you know, that's fantastic as well. And that's something, again, we want to facilitate, you know, from a head office level. I think this week we're just about to open our 8th studio down in Adelaide, down in Brighton. Thank you. Which is super exciting. You know, we just saw, I think it was yesterday, all of those coaches and some of them studio owners, etc., all get together at one location and sit around in a circle and just chat about how they can strengthen the brand presence in Adelaide. They've got majority market share out of any other brand. You know, how can they maximize on that? Part of it's the run clubs. Part of it's, you know, doing things where you get members, you know, crossing studios for certain events. And I think we really try and push the culture from head office that you never know everything. So you can always learn from each other. You know, I'm constantly learning from our members, from other coaches in the network, from my staff. You know, so I think we really want to push that culture all throughout our business, and I think we're starting to really see that manifest in locations, you know, in regions like Adelaide, where we've got 8 studios, 8 lots of coaches, 8 lots of managers, all in the one space. So I think that's really powerful.
And you're so right. It comes from the top down, right? Like hearing what, you know, you've said over the last 40 minutes or so, you know, content, the way in which you shoot content and the way in which the team at head office shoot content trickles down to the rest of the team, the way in which you guys hold yourself and you guys operate and how you interact with the community trickles down to the rest of that, you know, organisation or franchise model. So I think it's so important to acknowledge kind of how important it is as a business, regardless of whether you have other franchise, you know, opportunities or not, how important it is to come from the top down and to lead by example when it comes to that. You know, I, for example, last year realised, I think we spoke about this, how much my content had kind of dropped off in terms of creating content about the business and what I'm doing from a professional point of view. And I noticed the moment that I start putting more effort into it, my team then start putting more effort into their content. And I think it has this knock-on effect where it's like, if I'm prioritising it, they then start to prioritise it in the same way that for me, they know that, you know, I won't start my day without moving my body. They also will do that, whether that's at lunchtime or in the morning or whatever, but it comes from the top down, right? So I think that culture that trickles down from head office is so important to then trickle down to the rest of your businesses. Now, before we kind of get into kind of what's in the future, you've mentioned you've had kind of highs and lows with the business, as has every business owner, right? I think that if a business owner sits there and goes, it's been all smooth sailing, they're lying, or they've not been in it long enough.
Yep.
What were some of those kind of low moments, or, you know, you might looked at a time and like, you know, this is a failure or this isn't working? I know you spoke about like the identity and you spoke about having a bit of a crisis when it comes to who we actually speaking to. Is there any other moments that you've had over the last almost 4 years where you've kind of been like, fuck, this sucks or this isn't working?
Yeah, plenty.
Where do we start?
Plenty.
Stay tuned for the podcast on failures.
Yeah, part 2 coming back. Yeah, I think, you know, I think for the first kind of 6 months running the business, it was like that. You know, I think Ben and I were on the phone to each other almost every day, every second day, going, should we just pack it in? Should we just, should we just stop? Like, is it worth it? Are we going to get it there? You know, so that was pretty consistent. You know, I was speaking to Ben daily, and probably more than my wife at that stage. So, you know, so there's definitely some dark moments there at the start. We landed with 4 studios. We had to quickly build this system, this franchise system, and at that point in time, we could afford to pay me a small wage, and essentially I was PTing on the side to kind of make up the rest of my wage, so I could pay my bills and all that sort of stuff, and we couldn't even afford to pay Benny. So Benny was lucky that he owned 50% of a studio, and he was still coaching classes, so he could, you know, keep earning a living that way. So the business was really bootstrapped, and I think anyone that has bootstrapped a business will understand the highs and lows of that, and we call it the REVL roller coaster.
All aboard.
You know, yeah, all aboard, far out. And I think the nature of our business is it's all cash flow, right? And a lot of businesses, it's all cash flow. So when we sell a studio, we get a big lump sum in fees. There's about $70,000 worth of upfront fees that get paid to us. Fantastic. We get this spike in revenue. We're like, okay, cool. Now we can actually do some stuff. You know, we're not just stitching shit together. But you then need to sell another studio. Otherwise, you know, 2-3 months later, you're back below the line going, fuck, we can't pay ourselves again. So we kind of relied on selling new units inside the business to keep everything afloat. So I think in the first couple of years, there was a lot of times where, we were paying our staff before we were paying ourselves. We'd have to miss pay a week and all that sort of stuff. And I think back to what I was saying about Ben and I being two of the most stubborn people you'll ever meet, we were never going to give up.
No.
We just believed so deeply in the brand and the product that we knew we could make it work. We just needed to figure out how. Whether it was getting some, new advice or direction or whatever it was. But I think, there's definitely been some dark moments in there where we're like, do we just wrap this up?
Yeah.
I think another part of it is like we're essentially getting people to purchase a $250,000 to $400,000 business from us.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of these people are refinancing homes or getting private money from family or relatives or whatever. Like that weighs on you, as like Ben and I, there's countless times where we've been on the phone to each other, just, being like, fuck, what if we can't make this work?
Yeah.
But I think we're quite fortunate that we've got each other, so we can kind of bounce off each other and be like, 1 week he might be in the dumps and I'll be like, mate, it's all good. Trust me. We'll do this, and this, and then the next week that might be me and he's giving me. So we're quite lucky that we've got, got each other and my wife is fantastic as well. She's as honest as they come. So she's the first person to tell me to, stop carrying on, or if I speak about something for too long, she's like, shut up, just
do it.
Just do it. Just do it. Stop complaining,
100%.
And even though you don't want to hear it, sometimes you need to hear it. So I think the best thing for us has been seeking external parties that could kind of support us, whether it was personally or professionally. At the same time, you need to filter that advice. It's easy to give advice.
Yeah.
It's really easy to give advice.
And everyone has an opinion.
Everyone's got an opinion, but you need to be able to filter that and try things, test things. Don't be afraid to fail. I think that's the biggest thing.
I agree. I think the biggest thing, I've learned as well is that idea of being comfortable with failing. Like one of the questions that I ask myself weekly is, what's the worst that can happen? And if I can deal with the worst thing that can happen, like if the worst thing that can happen is I go back to working for someone else, my ego might be a little bit damaged. But like if that's the worst thing that can happen, let's just try it.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's such a nice way to segue into kind of the future of your brand. What are some trends? Like obviously the fitness industry, I feel like, for as long as I can remember, there's fads and like take shake diets and, keto diets and just eat protein, the caveman diet. Like there's things that change all the time, but they have this one kind of underlying premise, it's like all diets are based on the fact that they're creating calorie deficit, right? Where do you see the future of REVL going when it's really hard to predict what the future of the fitness industry will look like?
Yeah. I think for us, we've just kind of wrapped up a big branding piece, a big branding project.
More colour.
A little bit more colour, beige, like my shorts.
Sprinkle.
So I'm on brand. And I think for us, it was really doubling down on what REVL is, first and foremost, and will that stand the test of time? And I think where we kind of landed was that REVL has become a feeling more than a training studio or a fitness product. And I think, we've spoken a lot about community, friends, connections inside the studio and that sort of stuff that have kind of transcended beyond, beyond the studio walls. You're going out to dinner and fantastic. I think that is REVL. REVL is a feeling, and it's more of a lifestyle brand than anything else. So I think moving forward into the future, REVL will become a lifestyle brand, and I think the REVL training component will be one of our sub brands, which we're pretty pumped about, to be completely honest. I think. We want to play in the run club space. We want to play in the health and wellness space with introducing some saunas and ice bars and stuff like that. as well as apparel. You know, I love apparel. You know, if I could just live in apparel land, happy days, you know.
Note the hat.
Note the
for all those watching.
Exactly right. New hats dropping soon. Keep an eye out.
Shameless plug.
So I think for us, it's more so for the future of REVL, you know, we're essentially going to really hone in on what our customer wants. Mm-hmm. And that spans beyond just training. Mm-hmm. So I think we just need to deliver on that. I think, you know, at the start of the podcast, I was kind of talking about the type of training we offer and how it's been around for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. It's not a fad, so we can't see it going out of fashion. Yeah. It's just a matter of tweaking how it's delivered and how it looks and feels and sounds inside the studio and what that experience is like. You know, and that's, you know, we've got some exciting tech coming in July as well, which is even, that's incredible. It's going to be an incredible experience for members. So it's just about evolving, I think, all the pillars that kind of surround the experience, more so than, I guess, shifting the product or brand too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have like one prediction for the future of the fitness industry? Like if we were to look back in 5 years' time, do you have a prediction of where you think it's going?
I think everyone's going to have sore knees from running so much.
Sore knees, yeah. The Run Club revolution is huge. Like,
it is.
I just don't know
where it goes
or where it came from, to be honest with you, because I feel like a lot of, you know, the fitness trends, from my point of view, from probably more of a marketing point of view, a lot of the fitness trends come from people seeing other people doing those things and wanting to aspire to be like that person, right? And I think for me, I don't know where run clubs came from. I mean, personally, I'm trying to get better at running. But I've never looked at someone running and been like, wow, they look happy. Right? So I'm like, I don't understand where that kind of aspiration, it's obviously driven by community and being part of something and being part of something bigger, you know, being part of trying new things and things like that. But I don't know where it came from.
I honestly think it's such a fantastic case study from a marketing standpoint.
100%.
Like you look at running, and I think, my wife mentioned it to me, I don't know, middle of last year or towards maybe September-ish last year, when she bought a running belt and then bought some Hockers. Yeah. And I was like, why? How? Yeah. Like, where's this coming from? She's like, oh, I saw someone on TikTok and they were doing this and that, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden you see more people with running belts, more people with Salomon vests, with camelbacks, and to run
for their 2K
run 5K. Yeah. Like, it's phenomenal. Yeah. But the consumerism around these products has literally been driven by marketing content.
100%. By content.
Content. Yeah. And that's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. So, like, predicting what comes next, who knows? Yeah. Like, who honestly knows? But I think what this running era has kind of taught us is that you have to be adaptable because you actually don't know what's coming next. You can do your best to try, you know, and I think if you got into the Pilates game a year or two ago, you'd also be on the right track. You know, there's a lot of people doing Pilates at the moment, but I think what running kind of signifies is that people are ready to step outside their comfort zone when it suits and when they're influenced by someone or something. Yeah. So I think it's just about creating a strong enough movement that sees success for your business and your brand. And I think that's what we're going to be doing moving forward. It's being more in touch with our community so that I feel like when I walk into REVL Brookvale, I'm part of the community. When I walk into Neutral Bay, I feel part of the community. Yeah. And I think that's the kind of brand we want to build. And I think if you build a genuine brand and culture inside your business, I think, I think you'll be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I love it. I'm fascinated by run clubs.
Yeah, it's wild.
I mean, I initially, when I first heard about them, I was like, oh, it's trauma bonding. Like, one of the biggest, it's proven that people bond the most and your strength and connection through shared trauma. And that doesn't have to be like abuse or anything like that. Trauma could be, working at the same toxic workplace and you bonding with someone because you're like, we both fucking hate our boss. But I feel like running is one of those things that a lot of people didn't enjoy, but when they do it together, they get this sense of satisfaction out of it that they're like, well, we're best friends now because we've achieved something we didn't think that we could do.
For sure.
Now, before we get into my last couple of questions, if you could go back and start REVL again, what would you do differently?
That is a good question. I think what we would probably do is we grew the brand in breadth. So we started with a really small, close group of studios, and then we went, cool, we've got all this interest, bang. We're in Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, Victoria, we're now in Singapore, we're in Dubai. And it kind of, it in a way, it kind of diluted the brand to an extent because we couldn't continue, I guess, the original strategy or the way we were kind of marketing the business from the start and having like a really highly engaged audience that we could produce content for and that sort of stuff. So I think if I could go back again, I would really identify what was working and try and multiply that.
Yeah.
Rather than go, okay, growth is the goal. Let's grow.
Yeah.
I think if growth is the goal, it's going to be diluted. Whatever you're doing is going to feel diluted.
Yeah.
So that's definitely what we do. Just focus on a concentrated area where we would just grow the brand and business from there and build something that's just super, super strong. We've got strong people involved, the content's strong, and that'll in turn, those two things will build a strong brand.
Yeah, I love it. All right, last three questions that I'm asking everybody. Name one brand that comes or is top of mind for you.
Canyon.
Canyon. Why?
Canyon, because I rode one this morning.
I love that you didn't say REVL.
No, we've been talking about REVL enough.
We've been talking about REVL. What is one thing that you think that helps a business or a brand stay top of mind?
Engaging content, and that, you're competing for engagement more than ever. It needs to cut through. It needs to be fun and exciting, and people are just scroll. Why are they going to stop? I think that, huge button.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in the attention economy right now, and 100%. I think content is the only thing that is grabbing people's attention, right, and how you can make it work for you. And last but not least, what is a quote that is top of mind, something that perhaps that you live by or something that's continued to kind of come up in your business journey?
I think one that kind of aligns with, I guess, a lot of what we've spoken about is one from Simon Sinek, actually. I'm a Simon Sinek fan.
Yeah.
And he says that growth is not a cause, it's an output. And I think that really allows me to stay aligned with my why inside the business. We've spoken about authenticity. We've spoken about things having a why, things being genuine. And I think that's crucial. I think since we've shifted strategy this year, we're seeing so many things change for the better inside the business. Whether it's, attracting new employees to the business or just conversations with studio owners or everything starts to move in the right direction when you just align to your why. And I think, just focusing on growth, it's not a cause.
I love that. I love that so much. And that is a perfect place to finish. Josh, thank you so much for your time today. There's so much that I've taken out of today, and I think I've learned, I already felt as though I knew so much about the business because I use the product. But I feel like there's so much that people can take out of today, especially with the mentality of, you know, that top down approach, like leading with, you know, by example. You know, if you want something done a certain way, showing people how to do it and kind of taking them on that journey too is really important. So thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed the chat.
Thanks so much for having me. One
last thing from me. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love if you could leave us a review or hit the subscribe button wherever you are listening or watching this podcast.